Welcome to another wonderful Brenda Maxfield audiobook. We are excited to have you with us. Before we begin the story, please like and subscribe to our channel and share it with friends. This allows us to continue adding free clean Amish romance audiobooks for you to enjoy. The following title is copyrighted by Brenda Maxfield, Amish romance author. Now, find a comfortable spot, relax, and enjoy the story. The Amish Blogger. Chapter 1. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. John 14 verse 27 King James Version. Marian Yoder stood on the thick bedroom carpet of her new friend Amy Owens. She peered over Amy's shoulder, mesmerized by what she saw on the screen. "You mean you're having a conversation through the computer?" she asked, in awe. "Sure. We do it all the time. It's the messaging part of Facebook." Amy pointed to the small box in the corner of the screen. She looked at Marian and grinned. "D'you want to do it?" "Could I?" Marian sank onto the chair beside Amy. "No. Don't sit there. Trade seats with me." Amy got up from her desk and let Marian sit in front of the computer. "I'm talking with my friend Morgan in Chicago." Marian held her fingers over the keyboard. "What do I do?" "Just type hello or something. Whatever you want." Marian slowly tapped out the letters HELLO. "Now what?" "Press enter." Marian did as she was told and watched her message slip from one portion of the box to another. "Did I do it?" She stared at the screen. "Wait. Did I make a mistake?" Amy laughed. "No, you didn't make a mistake." A melodic bling sounded from the computer. "See," Amy said. "You got a message back." "Hello? Who am I talking to?" Marian giggled. "Do I write back now?" "If you want to." She wanted to. Never had Marian seen such a marvel. She'd heard about Facebook once when she was standing in line at Parker's ice cream shop in Hollybrook. Two young teen girls in front of her had jabbered excitedly about how they'd seen some famous band member on Facebook. Marian had thought it was a book full of profiles, perhaps of well-known singers and movie people. She'd been wrong. Very, very wrong. This was so much better than any book she'd ever seen or read. "You sure you aren't gonna get in trouble?" Amy asked, getting up from her chair and flouncing on her bed with its rich, fluffy purple spread. "No. It's my running around time." "You're running around time?" "Ja. Rumspringa." Marian forced her gaze from the screen and looked at Amy. She loved the way Amy's blonde hair fell over her shoulders in gentle curls. Her own blonde hair was pulled tightly back in a bun and covered with a cap. "Yeah, I've heard of that. Never knew anyone Amish, though, and to be honest, I don't really get what it means. It's a time when we're given more freedom. You know, before being baptized into the church. That way our decision isn't only because of family and tradition, it's personal because we want to obey and follow God. It's a commitment." Marian turned to focus back on the screen. She typed out another short message. "This is wonderful good. I love it. And you can search for any information in the world. Find out anything. You just type the subject into the search engine, and voila! Tons of info at your fingertips." Amy smoothed her hand over her bedspread. "I also have a blog. You'd probably love that, too." Her curiosity triggered, Marian gazed at Amy. "Teach me," she said. "Teach me all of it." By the time Marian returned home that evening, she had her own blog. Amy had helped her set it up on a free site. Marian had learned how to log in and where to put her username and password. To make sure Marian could do it on her own, Amy had watched her log in and out 5 times before she was satisfied. Marian's mind raced with the interesting things she could write about. There was even a place for comments on her blog, so Marian could chat with people just like she'd done on Amy's Facebook page. She rested her back against the smooth staircase railing, dreaming of her first post. Ma'am interrupted her reverie. "Oh, Marian, see to your sister, would you?" Ma'am hurried through the front room toward the kitchen. "Where were you so long? I needed you an hour ago." "Sorry, ma'am. I'll go get Izzy." Marian took the stairs 2 at a time to the baby's room. Little Isabel was hollering and kicking her bare feet, twisting the thin crib quilt around her chubby legs. "Izzy, what's the matter?" Marian asked, scooping up her red-faced sister. Isabel immediately quieted, snuggling into Marian's shoulder. "Why, Izzy, your face is all wet and your nose is running. You're getting me all soppy." But Marian didn't mind. She adored her little sister and was happy to tend to her. She changed Izzy's diaper and carried her through the upstairs hallway, passing 2 empty bedrooms her parents had hoped and prayed to fill with a parcel of children. But, to their never-ending sadness, the rooms stood vacant, she and Isabel being their only offspring. Not exactly a full house, let alone a parcel of children. Marian held Isabel extra close as they went downstairs. She loved the smell of a freshly changed baby. She switched Izzy to her hip and went into the kitchen. Ma'am was removing a batch of steaming biscuits from the cook stove. "Smells good," Marian said. She fetched the butter with her free hand and carried it out to the table. She looked around to see Ma'am leaning against the doorframe staring at her. "Where were you today?" "I went to visit Amy." "That English girl?" Ma'am, that English girl." Marian felt a flash of irritation at both Ma'am's tone and her question. After all, compared to other girls in Rumspringa, her activities were mild. She didn't even stay out late, she was always home by supper time. "I don't like you cavorting with the English," Ma'am said. "I'm hardly cavorting. She's my friend, and she's nice. You'd know that if you'd let me invite her over." "Invite who over?" Dat asked, coming through the front room, bringing the smell of the cornfields with him. "Hello, Dat," Marian murmured. "The English girl." "I don't like it, Zebediah. I don't like it one bit." Dat rubbed his hands together, a gesture he always made when he didn't have anything to say. Ma'am gave him an exasperated look, heaved a loud sigh, and turned back to the kitchen. "How are my girls?" Dat asked, seemingly ignoring Ma'am's annoyance. Isabel held out her arms, and Dat took her from Marian. "Spoke with Thomas Groft this afternoon," Dat said. Marian's eyebrows rose. Her father looked at her over the top of Izzy's fuzzy brown hair. "He came by to talk about the work frolic this Saturday." "Oh." Marian kept her voice calm. Dat hoisted Isabel to his other side. "Think his real reason for coming by was to get a glimpse of you." Marian's cheeks grew hot. "No, I hardly think so, Dat." But she did think so. Thomas had recently offered to give her a ride home one Sunday evening after the youth singing. That meant one thing, he was interested in her. But she had already promised to walk home with Lizzie Bontrager, who was finally old enough to attend the youth singings, so she could hardly agree to Thomas's invitation. But would she have gone with Thomas if she hadn't promised Lizzie? He was nice, and though he wasn't much taller than Marian, his slim frame gave the appearance of height. And his deep blue eyes had a touch of whimsy in them, as if he was always in a good mood. More than once, she'd purposefully stood near him just to hear him talk and laugh. Yes, she would have gone with him. Thomas Groft is a fine young man, Dat said, and then he gave a small shrug like it didn't have much significance. But Marian knew her father well. That shrug meant he would be right pleased if she allowed Thomas to court her. In fact, he'd be even more pleased to welcome Thomas into the family as a son-in-law. "Supper is ready," Ma'am called. Marian went to the table. "I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, ma'am. I'll do all the cleanup." Ma'am smoothed a few stray strands of hair back under her cap. Her stern face softened for a moment. "That'd be welcome," she said. But as soon as the words were uttered, her face stiffened back into its normal tight expression. "Supper looks fine," Dat said, reaching for the bowl of mashed potatoes. "Lydia, after eating, would you like to walk the fields a bit? It's awful pretty out and the corn has taken off. Marian can watch the baby." Ma'am frowned. "I've no time to be gallivanting the fields, Zeb. I have to tend to Izzy and red up the kitchen for the breakfast meal." "I can do that for you," Marian offered. Ma'am pressed her napkin to her lap. "No, I don't have the time," she insisted. Marian saw a flash of disappointment on Dat's face, but just as quickly it was gone. "All right, Lydia, you tend to your chores, then." For the rest of the meal, Dat was unusually quiet. The Hollybrook Public Library had always been a place of enchantment for Marian. When she was young, her mother would take her and allow her to check out books which had been pre-approved by her mother, of course. But no matter, Marian was always delighted to be reading any book. She used to stand in front of the crammed shelves and wonder that one place could house so many amazing adventures. When Marian learned the library had computers available for public use, she was beyond eager. The next morning, she hitched up the pony cart and went into town. She knew her new English friend would be there, as Amy volunteered to shelve books most mornings during the summer. So Amy could explain to her all the library's computer rules. And once Amy told her all she needed to know, Marian would be able to do it on her own. The thought of getting online anytime she pleased was more than Marian could comprehend. She pulled into the parking lot and hitched her pony to one of the posts the library provided for their Amish patrons. She glanced around. This early, no other Amish folks were there. She breathed a sigh of relief. She wasn't interested in explaining her computer usage to anyone in the district. A bit of guilt squirmed through her stomach, but she resolutely snuffed it out. This was her rumspringa after all. She was allowed. Yet still, she felt uneasy as she entered the library and looked for Amy. "Marian." "Hello." Amy called, spotting Marian first. Marian smiled and waved. "Over here," Amy said, gesturing her over. Marian joined her in a lounge area behind the front desk. It was filled with computers, 2 to a table. 3 other people were already working, their eyes intent on their screens. "I assume you came to work on your blog. Come over here, and let's use this computer," Amy suggested. She pulled a chair from another spot, so they could both be in front of the same computer. "Did you bring your library card?" "I did, but I haven't used it in a while." "Do you think it'll still work?" "One way to find out." Amy moved the mouse, and the screen came alive. "You have to put in your number right here, then you'll be able to go online. There's an hour limit, but if you ask the librarian, she might extend it for you." Marian pulled her card from her handbag and punched in the number. When she hit enter, the screen opened to the library's website. "You're in," Amy said. "How do I get to my blog?" "Remember what I showed you. Type the URL address here." Within minutes, Marian was on her blog, staring at a blank post. "I'll leave you alone. Go ahead and write." Amy rolled her chair to another free computer, leaving Marian to her own devices. Marian's pulse raced as she wrote a short piece about her experience with a stubborn goat named Bill. She was grinning widely when she finished. "Okay, I'm done." Amy rolled back over and read through her post, laughing. "This is good, Marian. Now, we're going to put in some search terms so someone besides me will read it." Amy taught her how to put in the terms, and then Marian pressed post. "Congratulations," Amy said. "You are now a blogger." Marian giggled. "Sounds funny, but I love the title just the same. Marian Yoder, the Amish blogger." "Thank you, Amy." "You're welcome." Marian glanced again at her post and felt a sense of elated satisfaction. She'd always loved to write, but never had she imagined something like this would be possible. "Hey, Owens." Marian turned to see who was calling for Amy. A tall, athletic-looking guy came toward them, sporting a wide smile. His arms were bare, and though she chided herself for it, Marian couldn't help but notice how muscular he was. His gray sleeveless t-shirt hung loosely over knee-length shorts. His flip-flops made sharp snapping noises as he approached. "What are you doing?" he asked. He grabbed a chair, twirled it around backwards, and straddled it. "Hey, Roger. Finished shelving my quota for the day, so we're just messing around." "What are you doing?" "Summer reading list for my college lit class. Looking to check the books out instead of buying them all." He shook his head. "Good thing I like to read. Otherwise, I might be miffed about so much work." He leveled clear green eyes on Marian. "Who are you?" he asked. Marian felt the heat rise to her face. "My name is Marian." He pointed back and forth between her and Amy. "How do you two know each other?" Amy grabbed his finger and laughed. "Pointing's rude." He gave her a playful nudge with his other hand. "Sorry, Your Royal Highness." His face sobered. "But seriously, how did you meet?" Marian was sitting and minding her own business outside the feed and supply. "Dad had sent me because he'd heard dog food was cheaper there, which it is, by the way. Anyway, I saw Marian and I plopped myself down, and we got to know each other." Marian smiled at Amy's retelling of their first meeting. Roger scratched his head. "But you're Amish," he said to Marian. In spite of his innocent look, Marian stiffened. He held up his hands. No. I didn't mean it in a bad way. It's just that you're sitting at a computer, and I thought that was forbidden." Before Marian could reply, he went on. "Oh, man. Sorry. It's not even my business. Forget it." "It's all right," Marian said. Her irritation faded as quickly as it had come. She was drawn to Roger's humble spirit and warm expression. "I'm in my running about time, so it's all right." "You mean rumspringa?" he asked. "You know what it's called?" She was impressed. He peered over her shoulder. "So what are you working on?" "She's a blogger," Amy said with a grin. "You've got a blog?" "No fooling. I've only typed one post. But it was fun." Marian was surprised at how easily she chatted with this stranger. And a male on top of that. Had becoming friends with Amy opened the door to feeling a bit more comfortable with other Englishers? "Give me your address, and I'll visit you," he said. Marian's eyes went huge. Ma'am and Dat would have a conniption if he came to visit her. With a start, she realized he meant her web address. He had no intention of visiting her for real. Hastily, she wrote down her URL, using a piece of square white paper and one of the stubby eraserless pencils the library had sitting out on every flat surface. Roger glanced at what she had written and then tucked the paper into his pocket. He stood and flipped the chair back around. "Well, I'll see you ladies later. I have some major reading to do." And with that, he was gone. Marian stared after him, watching his easy stride as he moved through the library. Amy began TSK, TSKING. I think someone likes Roger, she said. Marian balked. Me? No. It's okay if you do. But it's not. Marian stood, her chair rolling back on the carpet. It's not all right at all. I need to go home now, anyway. You have to log out, Amy reminded her. She put her slender hand on Marian's arm. Are you upset? Marian shook her head. No. It's just time for me to go home. Chapter 2. When Marian pushed through the smooth white front door of her house, Ma'am was fuming. Where have you been? She snapped. Ma'am, I told you. I'm spending time at the library. Her mind flashed to Roger's friendly smile, but she quickly erased the image. And what am I to do? Ma'am asked, fingering the edge of her apron. What do you mean? With all the chores around here and a baby. I'm not one of those machines the Englishers have to do all the work. Marian stared at her mother. There was an odd glint in her hazel eyes and an agitation to her manner. Izzy began wailing upstairs. Ma'am. The baby. Is she still in her crib? Ma'am flinched. Of course she's in her crib. How else am I supposed to get anything done? Marian hurried up the steps to the baby's room. She picked up Izzy and felt the wetness through her clothes. Oh, Izzy. You're drenched. Let's get you changed. Izzy gasped and hiccuped as Marian changed her diaper and gown. You hungry, too? Marian asked. Come on downstairs with me, little one. I'll mash up some banana for you. Marian walked into the kitchen and went straight for the bowl of fruit. Ma'am looked up from the sink. What are you doing? Isabel is hungry. I'm getting her some banana. Irritation surged through Marian. What was the matter with Ma'am? She'd never neglected the baby before. A memory rushed through Marian's mind from a couple months past. She'd come home from a trip to the feed and supply and found Izzy lying on a soiled blanket in the middle of the front room, crying. Ma'am had been outside with the chickens, and when Marian asked her about it, she'd been contrite and said she'd lost track of time. It had disturbed Marian, but since it hadn't occurred again, she'd temporarily forgotten about it. But now? Surely with such swollen eyes, Izzy had been sobbing for some time before Marian had gotten home. Ma'am, are you all right? Marian asked, giving her sister a spoonful of mashed banana. Izzy swallowed the fruit and smacked her lips, dribbling some down her chin and reaching out for more. Look how hungry she is, Ma'am said, ignoring Marian's question. She moved close and picked up Izzy's hand to give it a little shake. Why didn't you tell Mama you wanted to eat? She was crying her head off, Marian said, indignant. You didn't go to her. Ma'am's eyes narrowed. Don't you act disrespectful with me, daughter. She took Izzy from Marian's arms and cuddled her. You're all right now. Mama's here. She took the spoon from Marian, scooped up another mouthful of banana, and gave it to Isabel. Marian watched her dumbfounded. She was acting as if the whole thing had been out of her control. Is Dat in the fields? Marian asked. Ma'am gave Izzy a kiss on her nose. How should I know? She answered without taking her eyes from the baby. Marian went out through the washroom. She hurried to the edge of the field and shaded her eyes, scanning the land. She spotted Dat amidst the waist-high corn in the far left field and took off through the stalks of young corn to meet him. Dat! Zebediah Yoder paused and wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his gloved hand. He gazed at his daughter. Marian, what are you doing out here? I need to talk with you. It couldn't have waited till I came in for dinner? No. It can't wait. What's wrong with ma'am? She blurted. Dad's eyelids flickered and a muscle close to his jaw twitched. You're meaning? She's ignoring Izzy and complaining about too much work. Your mama does have more work now that you're in your running around time. He bent down and yanked up a large weed, slapped it on his thigh, and let it drop on the dirt between the rows. Not so much more work, Marian said, her words more hesitant now. I suggest you stop criticizing your mama and give her more help. Dad didn't look her in the eye when he continued. You're spending a lot of time with that English friend of yours. Marian sighed. Isn't that the point? Don't I have more freedom these days? I'm not baptized yet. That I know. Dad turned from her and walked between the narrow rows. Might be time to consider whether you're going to take instruction come fall. But Dad held up the back of his hand to her and kept moving, and Marian knew the conversation was over. She made her way back through the stalks, hearing their rhythmic swish against her dress. How did the conversation twist around to her rumspringa when she had only wanted to express her concern about ma'am? And Marian shouldn't be made to feel guilty about her activities. This was her time for more freedom, and everyone in the district understood that and accommodated their own older teens when the time came. She tried to brush aside her annoyance and was nearly to the house when she spotted someone standing on the road near their large elm tree out front. She looked more closely and was surprised to recognize Thomas Groft. He was clearly loitering, as if waiting for someone or something. She ran across the grass and approached him. Thomas? He looked down, kicked the dirt on the side of the road, and then gave her a shy grin. Hey, Marian. Marian glanced around. You waiting for someone? His face reddened. Truth be told, I was waiting for you. Me? He coughed and bent to pick up a stick. Wondering about giving you a ride home from the next youth singing. He gave her a smile then, and the blue of his eyes was so warm and inviting, she laughed. You don't give up easy, do you? You said you had plans last time I asked. Wanted to make sure I was your plan next time. He tossed the stick to the other side of the road, then looked directly at her. She returned his gaze, her mind awhirl. Thomas also hadn't joined church yet, but his loyal nature almost guaranteed that come fall, he would. Marian herself was almost certain she would be baptized, too, although she was reluctant to put it into words yet. Somehow, her father's pressure made her resist a declaration, which she supposed was immature of her, but there it was. Thomas coughed and Marian realized she was keeping him waiting too long. His expression was compelling, and she realized she wanted to go with him. I would like that, she agreed warmly. Thomas's shoulders relaxed, and he nodded. Wonderful good. I'm counting on it, then. He tipped his hat in farewell and took off down the road, taking long strides and whistling. She smiled after him, her heart feeling light at the prospect. Thomas Groft was kind and a good catch, as her friend Lizzie Bontrager would say. She wondered what Amy Owens would think of him. She smiled to herself, already visualizing how enjoyable it would be to ride home with Thomas, to sit beside him in his carriage and talk together in the cool evening air. She heard Isabel's cry all the way from the road. Her mind jolted back to her ma'am and the baby. She turned on her heel and took off running toward the house. She burst through the front door, expecting the worst, but instead she saw her mother rocking Isabel against her chest, cooing into the baby's ear. What happened? Marian cried. Oh, a pan lid dropped to the floor. Made such a racket, it scared the baby half to death. Marian put a hand to her chest, and her breathing returned to normal. I thought maybe she was hurt or something. Ma'am scowled. Isabel is perfectly fine. I don't understand your unnatural concern. Marian blanched at the scolding and retreated upstairs to her room. Perhaps she was exaggerating the situation. Right then, Ma'am had seemed perfectly fine. Maybe the incident earlier was nothing. Marian closed her eyes and prayed that God would watch over them all. Chapter 3. The next morning, Ma'am bustled around the kitchen like usual. Izzy sat in her high chair eating a handful of dry cereal off the tray. Marian watched them both for a moment before retrieving the iron skillet and putting it on the cook stove. She poured a bit of grease drippings into it. "I'll get the eggs frying," she said. "Thank you, Marian." Ma'am filled 2 cups of coffee and carried them toward the dining area. Dad got an especially early start this day, but he should be coming in to eat right soon. "We'll be ready," Marian said. She felt her muscles loosen and relax as she continued to observe her ma'am. She nearly laughed at herself as she broke the eggs into the sizzling grease. What had she been thinking the day before? It now faded into nothing as she noted Ma'am's completely normal behavior. "I'm going to the library again today," she said, watching her mother for a reaction. "All right, daughter. Could you stop at the feed and supply on the way home? I have some items that need purchasing." Of course, ma'am. Just give me the list." Marian's eyes sparkled as she thought about working on her blog again. She was planning to post a poem about planting thyme. She loved poetry, although it was hardly encouraged during her 8 years of school. Nevertheless, she'd worked on various poems over the years, stashing the scraps of paper inside her dresser drawer. But the poem she planned to post that day was new. It was written earlier, just before dawn when it seemed the world held its breath. Words swirling through her mind had awakened her, and she had lit the candle next to her bed to get them down before they disappeared. She'd learned long ago that words not captured had a way of retreating back into the unknown, forgotten forever. Within minutes, Dad came tromping in and breakfast was served. Before he headed back to the barn, he stood and looked at Marian. "Your plans today?" he asked. "Besides being a help to your ma'am?" His look was pointed. "I'm going to the feed and supply for her." "Can I use the pony cart?" Marian said. "And she's going to the library," Ma'am added, before Marian had a chance to offer the information herself. Dad hooked his thumbs under his suspenders and observed Marian with a doubtful gaze. "How long?" "You mean how long will I be at the library?" Marian's previous excitement soured in the face of Dad's obvious displeasure. "That's what I'm saying, Dot. A couple hours or so." "Not long, Dad." He said no more, but before leaving the room, he rubbed his hands together and pressed his lips into a tight line. Ma'am picked up the serving dishes. "You're not seeing that English girl again, are you?" "Hadn't planned to," Marian said, unsure whether Amy would be at the library that day or not. "And her name is Amy." "I've told you." Ma'am kissed Izzy on the head as she passed by on her way to the kitchen. "We've a work frolic this Saturday. Don't forget." Marian followed her mother into the kitchen. "The quilting, you mean?" "The quilting. And the men are working on a shed. I expect you to come. Can't you excuse me this once?" "I don't think I should have." Ma'am slammed a large metal spoon onto the counter and Marian jumped. "You're coming." Ma'am snapped. Marian clamped her mouth shut and stared at her mother. Why such an emotional reaction? Just because she didn't want to go to the frolic? With a stifled sigh, Marian finished cleaning up the dishes, careful not to do anything further to upset her mother. Ma'am stood next to the window watching her, a vacant, tired look on her face. The barn was stuffy as Marian led Frisky outside to hitch her to the pony cart. Frisky's tail swished and swatted at the flies hovering around her. Marian flailed her arms a few times, too, trying to chase the pesky insects away. She had mixed feelings about leaving the house that morning, but after the cleanup, Ma'am had handed her the list of items she was to pick up on her way home, so she decided it was fine to go after all. I shouldn't be gone long, Marian had assured her. When Ma'am hadn't responded, Marian had taken the list, given Izzy a snuggle, and gone out to the barn. Frisky allowed herself to be hitched without a fuss, and Marian was on her way quickly. The steady plod of Frisky's hooves and the lazy heat swirling through the air set Marian to pondering. Was there truly something going on with Ma'am, or was she merely tired and out of sorts? Marian had known other crotchety women who still managed to care for their families and homes. Maybe she was focusing on it these days because she was nearly an adult herself and was simply more aware. But she did need to be more careful. She needed to watch what she said and did with extra diligence. She could do that. And she could step up the help she gave her mother around the house, too. A horn blasted and Marian flinched, holding the reins steady. The car raced around her, setting her skirt billowing against her legs. "Steady, girl," she said to Frisky. Steady. Englishers always seemed to be in such a rush. As she neared town, she sat up straighter, even more careful to avoid dangerous situations with the cars sharing the road. She was fully aware that many Englishers resented driving alongside Amish buggies and carts, or even worse, driving behind them. On occasion, her friends had been pelted with fruit and rocks as they traveled on the public roads. Marian herself had never seen it happen or been the target, but she was cognizant of the danger every time she drove. She pulled into the library lot and secured Frisky. Her excitement mounting, she hurried inside to the computer area, planning on staying a very short time. Carefully, she logged on and signed in, just as Amy had taught her. When her blog popped up on the screen, she noted that she'd received 2 comments. She leaned close to read them. They were both by someone named Literature Buff 19. Loved learning some about your Amish life. Am curious, do you ever wish you weren't Amish? Marian's eyes widened. Not Amish? She never allowed her mind to go there. Never. She was Amish, and she would probably officially join the church come fall. Not Amish? Unthinkable. She read the next comment. Liked meeting you. Don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but you're pretty. Truly. Marian's hands dropped to her lap. Literature Buff 19? It couldn't be Amy, because Amy would have identified herself right away. Besides, she wouldn't have written such comments. Roger. Of course, it was that Roger she'd met. After all, he'd told her he was going to visit her. But telling her she was pretty? That was inappropriate, pure and simple. She shouldn't even respond. Or maybe she should respond and tell him not to say such things. She placed her 2 first fingers over the keyboard, but a flicker of hesitation coursed through her. She reread the last comment 2 more times, and a pleasant warmth filled her stomach. Pretty? Was she? Truth be told, she'd never given it much thought. With only a small hand mirror at home, she'd not spent much time assessing her appearance. Besides, it was vanity to do so. But she couldn't deny the small thrill Roger's words gave her. She bit her lower lip. What would Dad think, her sitting there all gooey because an Englisher had complimented her? It wasn't to be abided. Perhaps the best option was to ignore the comment. She clicked on the tab that said New Post and took out the scrap of paper she'd tucked into the waistband of her apron before leaving home. She smoothed out its wrinkles and began pecking out the words of her poem. It took much longer than was reasonable to get it looking good on the page, but she finally succeeded. She hit publish and watched it load onto her blog. Marian smiled and then looked around self-consciously, grateful the library was fairly vacant. She logged off and patted the keyboard with the tips of her fingers. See you soon, she whispered. Her cheeks grew warm at the thought of speaking to a computer like it was a person. But in a way, it was like a person with a mind and everything. Never in her wildest imaginings could she have dreamed up such a thing. Since she was already at the library, Marian decided to take a few more minutes to check out some fiction books. She was careful in her selection, knowing that both Mam and Dat would look them over. Dat wasn't big on any false stories, but Mam had always been more willing, as long as she could veto what she considered inappropriate. Satisfied they would approve her choices, Marian checked out 2 books. She held them against her waist as she pushed the heavy glass door open and went outside into the bright sunlight. Marian! Marian looked up into Roger's green eyes. She was so surprised, she nearly dropped both her books. I knew you'd be here, Roger said, taking her books from her. I'll walk you to your wagon. At her stupefied expression, he continued, that is your wagon over there, right? She nodded. I followed your blog. Her brow creased. Followed my blog? He laughed and set her books on the front bench of the cart. It means every time you post, I get an email. So when I got an email a while ago, I knew you had to be at the library. Or at Amy's. I took a chance it was the library. I was hoping to get here before you left. Marian didn't know how to respond to his openness. She unloosed the reins from the post and climbed into the cart. I'd like a ride, Roger said, leaning against the cart. Will you give me one? A ride? Marian was flustered. She'd already glanced around twice to ensure no one was watching her speak with an English boy. Didn't you drive a car? Sure I did. Riding in a car is no big deal. I thought it'd be fun to ride in a wagon. He gave her such a charming smile, she became unnerved enough to nod her agreement. With a smooth leap, he was sitting next to her on the bench seat. Marian immediately regretted her assent. She began to perspire, feeling the dampness cover her face and hands. She clenched the reins tight. Are we gonna go? Roger asked, looking at her. Wait. Are you all right? She swallowed twice, willing her pulse to stop racing. He put his hand on her shoulder, and she flinched. Without a word, he climbed out of the cart. You don't really want to give me a ride, do you? She shook her head. Then she nodded. Then she shook her head again. I must look a fool, she despaired. She mustered up the nerve to look directly at him. His eyebrows were drawn down in a frown. I was wrong to ask, he said. Treating this like some kind of carnival ride or something. His face flushed, and he clasped the edge of the cart. I'm sorry, Marian. He looked so contrite, Marian's heart went out to him. No, it's not that. Her words came quickly. It's just that I shouldn't be seen with you. That's all. He tipped his head and regarded her. So, you're not offended? Should I be? I hope not. He gave her a smile that sent her pulses racing. Hey, he continued, if we weren't in public, could you give me a ride then? She couldn't help but ask, where wouldn't we be in public? I have an idea, he said. If you're interested. What's your idea? She was treading out to thin ice that could easily break wide open, but she couldn't stop responding to his engaging manner. There's an old speedway not far out of town. You been there? No. But I've passed by. You could give me a spin around the track a few times. She smiled. Never had anything sounded like such wonderful fun. I could. Will you get in trouble? Would she? Not if no one saw them or reported the incident to her father. I don't think so, she said. Roger grinned. All right then. But I was serious, you know. I wouldn't want to be the cause of trouble for you. Thank you. He gave a resounding clap and then backed away from the cart. No, thank you. I'll meet you there. And with that, he strode quickly to his car, a small black affair with only 2 doors, and got in. Marian pulled on the reins to back up a bit before giving Frisky a click of her tongue. She turned the wagon the opposite direction from home and headed to the old speedway track. It shouldn't take but 15 minutes or so to get there. Chapter 4. It took 25. Marian hadn't counted on having to stop for a train to pass. She wondered if Roger would wait for her. Surely he had arrived within minutes in his car. As she neared the speedway, she found herself torn between hoping he was there and hoping he wasn't. Did Rumspringa really give her permission to meet English boys in deserted places? She didn't think so. And she'd known plenty of sweet Amish girls who'd lived to regret their hasty decisions regarding English boys. Would she regret it, too? But as she turned Frisky into the large lot and saw Roger leaning against his car waving at her, all worry slipped away. You made it, he called. She pulled the cart up to his car. I'm sorry it took so long. I had to wait for a train. No worries. I'm just glad you came. Again, he leapt into the cart and sat beside her on the bench. The pony cart wasn't large and neither was the bench. Roger's leg rubbed up against hers, and Marian could hardly concentrate enough to give Frisky the go-ahead. But within minutes, Frisky was trotting around the track. Roger raised his arms and laughed. We do this on rides at the fair. Hold up our hands. Marian giggled at him. Looks like you're trying to fly. Maybe I am. Marian shook her head in amusement. I didn't know Englishers were so strange. So I'm strange to you, am I? His face grew serious. Her brow crinkled into a frown. No. He laughed. Oh, Marian, you are something else. She pressed her lips together and concentrated on Frisky. Do I make you nervous? She nodded. Do you want to try to fly? He asked. I'm sure I can drive this wagon. She looked at him out of the corner of her eye. You think so? Sure. Why not? She debated for a brief moment and then handed him the reins. He gave them a gentle slap, and Frisky increased her speed. Put your arms up, he said. She raised her arms high and felt the wind rush by. The sun enveloped her in warmth, and she felt her spirits soar. She began to giggle and then laugh out loud. I'm flying, she called out. I'm flying. Roger laughed along with her. She knew he watched her, that he hadn't taken his eyes from her. She lowered her arms, but she kept smiling for the pure joy of it all. Roger nudged her, and she nudged him back. It was like they'd been friends forever. Roger tugged back a bit on the reins, and Frisky slowed to a trot and then to a walk. They continued to circle the track, Marian silent now as she simply rode and enjoyed the moment. When they neared the beginning of the track, close to where Roger had parked his car, he pulled back on the reins and Frisky stopped. He turned to Marian. This was the most fun I've had in weeks, he said quietly. Thank you, Marian. It was the most fun I've had maybe ever, Marian murmured in reply. Then she put her hand to her mouth, embarrassed to have revealed such a private thought to this Englisher. I'll take that as a compliment, Roger said. He handed her the reins, brushing his hand against hers. His touch zapped through her, and she stared down at her hands, unmoving. Can I see you again? He asked. Marian felt a moment of fear. What was she doing? She couldn't become involved with an Englisher. But the thought of not having such fun again sent a spasm through her stomach. She paused and waited for it to pass. She hadn't been raised to give in to her emotions. No. I don't think it would be wise, she said, her voice soft. He didn't respond for a moment. Then with a sigh, he agreed. You're probably right. He climbed from the cart. But today was wonderful. She nodded. Jaw. It was. I'm still going to follow your blog. She gave him a half smile. All right. Then I guess this is goodbye. Jaw. Goodbye, Roger. She stared at him as he walked away. Go with God, she called out after him. He lifted his hand but kept walking to his car. Marian urged Frisky on, now worried about arriving home well beyond the expected hour. She dashed into feed and supply, grabbed Mam's items, and practically jumped back in the cart to continue home. She was still in a state of animation over her encounter with Roger. As the wind rushed by her on the way home, she was mentally back at the speedway, raising her arms, flying around the field. She heard Roger's laugh in her mind and cherished every unexpected moment of their adventure. Never had she known anyone so fun-loving. Never had she felt so carefree and uninhibited. What would Amy think about her escapade? Marian wanted to tell her immediately, but there was no way to contact her. She wouldn't be able to check for a message on her email account until she returned to the library. But, oh, how she wanted to tell her. Or tell someone. She wondered what Lizzie Bontrager would think. Knowing Lizzie, she would think it was wonderful. And it was. Beyond wonderful. She pulled into the lane to their house and drove the cart to the barn. She climbed out and unhitched Frisky. Come on, girl, she crooned. You worked unusually hard today. I'm going to take an extra minute to give you a special rub-down. She led the horse inside the barn and grabbed the brush she always used on Frisky. She gave her long strokes, talking to her all the while. Frisky responded by nuzzling Marian's chest. Marian laughed and gave her another stroke. You're late, daughter, Dat said, standing at the barn entrance. His expression was rigid and his arms hung stiffly at his sides. Marian's hand lowered from Frisky's back. I'm sorry, Dat. But I'm here now, and I got Mam's things. Your Mam is plumb wore out today. I sent her to bed. And she went? Marian's mouth opened in surprise. Lying down during the day was simply not done unless one was terribly ill. She never even argued. Izzy needs tending. Where is she? In her crib. She's still napping, but I reckon she'll be up right quick. Marian dropped the brush onto the wooden shelf. She grabbed the bag from feed and supply and hurried off toward the house. Marian, her dad called. She paused and looked back. Don't disturb your mam. She frowned. I won't, Dat. I'll just see to Izzy. She ran the rest of the way, the troubled look on her father's face imprinted on her mind. What if Mam really was sick? What if it was serious? What if? She burst through the side door, her ears alert for the slightest sound of Izzy. She breathed with relief when she heard nothing. Still, she scurried upstairs and tiptoed to the baby's room. She inched the door open and peered inside. Izzy was on her tummy, knees shoved up beneath herself, and her bottom sticking up in the air. Still sound asleep. Quietly, Marian backed out of her room. She stood in the hallway, staring at her mam and Dat's bedroom door. It was closed tight. She crept close and put her ear next to the wood. She stayed like that for a minute or two, feeling the cool, smooth surface against her skin, but she heard nothing. With a sigh, she headed back to the stairway. She forgot to avoid the top step that creaked under any weight, and a sharp sound echoed through the hallway. Who's there? Came her mother's strident voice. Marian's shoulders tensed as she went back to her ma'am's room. She knocked softly and opened the door. "Hello, ma'am? It's me. Are you all right?" The curtains had been pulled and the room lay in shadows. In the partial darkness, Marian could see ma'am sitting up, looking at her. "I'm in bed," ma'am replied. "Can I get you some chamomile tea? It might settle your tummy." "My tummy isn't upset," ma'am snapped. "Your fool dat sent me in here. I'm perfectly fine now." She tossed back the covers and got up. "Ma'am, please, let me get you some tea. You can rest a while, and I'll get dinner." "Oh. You'll get dinner? How will you do that? You're but a babe." Marian went stiff. "Ma'am." Ma'am stepped across the room and pushed Marian aside with the back of her hand. "You run outside and play now. I've almost got dinner ready." Ma'am adjusted her cap over her tight bun and walked out of the room. Marian stared after her. A babe? A wave of fear clutched Marian's heart. Something was wrong even if Dat denied it. Ma'am was not acting normally. Does she really think I'm still a child? If Dat wouldn't listen to her concerns, Marian would go to her auntie. Yes, that's what she would do. Auntie Barb would help her. Chapter 5. Marian got her chance to leave the house after she'd finished the supper dishes. She told her parents she was going for a walk, which was true. She merely didn't mention where she was walking. When she left, Dat was rocking Izzy on the porch and Ma'am was sitting beside him, knitting on a scarf she'd started months earlier. They looked the perfect picture of complete normalcy. Marian felt a catch in her throat as she glanced at them one last time before hurrying down the lane toward Auntie Barb's place. She heard the commotion of the youngsters' voices from a good stretch away. She recognized her young cousins hollering as they played what sounded like tag. She knew poor little Alfred would have been the one just tagged. Being only 5, he simply couldn't keep pace with the others. Marian increased her speed and was instantly surrounded when she reached the farm. The children swarmed her, clamoring at her to join in the fun. "It's especially good when it's almost dark," Patty, the eldest of the cousins, said. "Not now, little ones. I need to talk to your mama." "Is she about?" "She's inside," Alfred said with a shy grin. Marian patted his blonde curls. "Thank you. I'll go on in then." She extricated herself from all 5 of them and went through the front door into the kitchen. "Auntie," she called. "Oh. Is that you, Marian?" Barb got up from a rocker that was positioned next to the cook stove. "You caught me catching a moment." Her face was flushed as she stood. Marian waved her arm. "With that parcel outside, I'd say you've earned more than a moment." Barb laughed. "Can I get you some tea? Would you like a fresh-baked peanut butter cookie?" Marian shook her head. "I need to speak with you, Auntie." Barb's face turned serious. She pulled a chair from across the room and set it next to the rocker. "Sit down, child." "What is it?" "It's Ma'am." Barb frowned and sat back in the rocker. "I knew this would happen." "What do you mean?" Marian asked, dread and fear swirling through her stomach. "I'm getting ahead of myself," Barb said, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Suppose you tell me what's happening. I think something's wrong with her mind. She's neglecting Izzy 1 minute and calling me a babe the next. She's confused. Harsher than usual." The words flowed from Marian, and she clenched the arms of the chair, as if that would keep her from falling into a deep hole. Barb closed her eyes and rocked for a moment. Marian looked on, the tension inside mounting. Finally, she could wait no longer. "What is it? What's happening to her?" You've spoken to your dad? But he shrugs it off. I told him you were old enough. Old enough for what? Marian had to force herself to stay seated. What is it? Her voice grew louder. Barb sighed heavily. I'm going to break confidence and tell you. Her hazel eyes that looked nearly identical to Mam's, misted over. Fact is, your Mam has lost another baby. Recent like. Now Marian did jump from her chair. What? Barb reached out and grabbed her hand, trying to pull her back to a sitting position. Sit down, child. I'm not a child. That's not what I meant. Sit down, please. Marian Saturday, what baby, auntie? Barb began rocking again, more rapidly this time. Your Mam has had her share of woe with birthing babies. Indeed, her share of bad luck bringing them to term. Them? You mean, besides Izzy and me? Barb nodded her head and a pained look came to her face. Counting this last one, she's lost 4. 4. Marian's world turned upside down. How can that be? Barb put her hand on Marian's knee. 2 before you. 1 between you and Izzy and now this one. But I didn't even know she was in the family way. Her pattern is to carry them between 2 and 3 months. Then, nature has its way and she loses them. Barb's face crumpled, and she sniffed. Then she blinked hard, and her features smoothed back out. It's affected her. Of course it would affect her. But why wasn't I told? She keeps it quiet. The first 2 times, most of the family knew, which made it worse for Lydia. She wanted to grieve in silence. But this last time? I don't understand. How could I not know? We thought this time, it would be all right. She had no nausea, she felt fine. I think she was ready to break the news to you and the rest of the family when it happened again. But how could I not know? Marian repeated for the 3rd time, her mind struggling to make sense of it. You weren't home when it happened. Zeb fetched me, and I helped her through it. He didn't even bother with the midwife. He knew only too well what was happening. Dazed, Marian sat without moving, staring at her aunt's face. After I bathed Lydia and cleaned everything up, she insisted on going down and cooking dinner. She wouldn't rest. It was odd her getting up like that, for sure and for certain. But I let her be. Marian's heart squeezed as she envisioned her Mam getting up directly afterward to begin dinner preparations. I told Zeb there and then, you must be told. He said no. Lydia didn't want it told. Barb looked at her with such sadness, Marian's chest constricted. I honored his wishes though I didn't agree. Still don't. You could have been a help to her. Barb leaned closer. It's marked her. Each time, I've watched her struggle to accept it, to exercise her faith. To believe the good Lord is watching out for her. Marian sank heavily against the back of the chair. How was it possible this had happened right in her very own house, and she'd had no knowledge of it? Her mind. Marian started, unsure how to even continue. She'll be all right. It will take some time. It always does. But then things will even out and she'll be fine. But she seems not right in the head. Marian swallowed over the lump in her throat. I think she needs help. Impossible, Barb said. She's a stubborn one, is your Mam? I told you the secret, may the Lord God forgive me. I can't be telling anyone else. She got up then and Marian could see by the set of her mouth the conversation was over, but she kept on. I could talk to the bishop. He could pray for her. Barb's face grew stern. I told you because you need to know, she's your Mam and you can be of help to her. But don't you go telling the bishop. I didn't break confidence so you could spread it around. But, Auntie, what if she does need help? What are you saying, girl? Are you saying she won't get better? She only needs you, and she needs prayer and the good Lord's gentle care. Barb picked up a dish towel and rubbed it hard over the counter. Then she turned to her niece. Oh, I'm sorry. It's hurt me, too, but that doesn't give me cause to be harsh with you. She stepped close and rested her hand on Marian's shoulder. Go on home now. Go on home and see to your mama. She'll be all right. She always is. Marian nodded. Tears flooded her eyes, but she wiped her hand across them hastily to keep them from blinding her. Thank you for telling me, she whispered. She stood and walked from the kitchen, through the washroom, and out the side door into the growing darkness of the trees lining the way to the road. Marian! Are you there? Alfred called from the front yard. Can you play now? Marian. Play with us. Patty cried. Marian waved at them and kept walking, her heart in her throat, and the tears now falling freely down her cheeks. Partway home, Marian stopped and leaned against an elm tree, her thoughts still spinning with her new knowledge. Ma'am had 4 miscarriages? For little babies who didn't make it into the world? It was inconceivable. And Marian hadn't know about any of them? Not even the last one? And what was Dat thinking? Why wouldn't he tell her? Did he have so little confidence in her? And during it all, she had been enjoying her running around time. She rested her head against the rough bark and felt it catch at her cap. She reached up to unsnag herself. She was finished with rumspringa then. Ma'am needed her. Izzy needed her. To think that she was at the library, and on the internet no less, when Ma'am was suffering. She closed her eyes and prayed for her Ma'am and for forgiveness for her own blind eyes. She prayed for her 4 little siblings who had never drawn a breath. She prayed for Dat and how he must have hurt. Marian? Marian's eyes flew open, and she stared directly at Thomas Groft. Are you okay? Seeing him there, feeling his deep concern, Marian had a sudden urge to bury herself in his arms. To let him speak comfort to her. To let him make it all better. Shocked by her reaction to him, Marian sniffed and quickly wiped the tears from her cheeks. I'm fine, she muttered. Fine. You're crying. It's nothing. I'm okay. His kind eyes searched hers. You're sure? She gave him a tremulous smile and stepped away from the tree. I'm certain. She looked around and saw he was alone. What brings you out this evening? He bent down to pick up a rock. I often walk in the evenings. Find it peaceful. He tossed the rock across the road. It's my time for thinking. Marian studied his face. Time for thinking? His cheeks reddened, and he cleared his throat. Can I walk you home? It's not far. I know. But still. She nodded. All right, if you like. They fell into step, both of them quiet. Marian appreciated his presence and his lack of talk. She shivered as her mind still tried to come to grips with her Ma'am's loss. Even with any Barb's assurances, she worried that there was more to Ma'am's distress than would simply be gone with few weeks of time. Perhaps she should find out on her own about it. But how? Andy had told her not to tell the bishop. But what about old May? She knew all about sickness. She'd have some herbal remedy that might help Ma'am. She wondered why Ma'am hadn't gone to May in the first place. Thomas stopped walking. She looked at him, puzzled. We're here, he said. She blinked, realizing they were standing at the beginning of her drive. He raised his hand as if to touch her, then dropped it to his side. You're sure you're all right? Ja. She blew out her breath. Just a bit preoccupied. Are you going to the work frolic on Saturday? If Ma'am goes, I'll go, she said. He was silent then, watching her. She wanted to see more deeply into his eyes, she wanted to know what he was thinking, but in the growing darkness and with the brim of his hat so low on his forehead, it was impossible. Marian, he said softly. Ja. If you ever need me, all you have to do is ask. Her throat filled with sudden tears, and she swallowed past the growing tightness. Thank you, Thomas. And then he did touch her. He put his hand to her wrist, and she felt the firm strength in his touch. Again, she stifled an urge to lean on him and let him embrace her. I'll see you Saturday, then? She nodded, hoping her thoughts weren't obvious. All right. Bye, Thomas. Bye. He touched the brim of his straw hat and was off into the growing darkness. She stared after him, watching his strong, definite steps down the road. She knew down to her very core Thomas could be depended on. He was someone who would be there through whatever life offered. She took a deep breath. Dat would be pleased if she revealed interest in Thomas Groft, for Thomas would make a fine beau and a fine husband, the whole community knew that. She walked slowly toward the front steps. Her mind was full to bursting and anxiety over her mother twisted through her thoughts. She turned and looked back the way Thomas had disappeared into the night. She closed her eyes and inhaled, letting the night air settle deeply into her lungs. Unbidden, the image of Roger's smiling face flashed into her mind and she gave a start. Why would she be thinking of him? Disgusted with herself, she climbed the steps and went inside the house. Chapter 6. The next day, Marian rose early and had breakfast going before Ma'am was even up. Dat had long since gone out to the barn and the fields. And since Izzy often slept till later, Marian had the lower floor all to herself. Marian was setting the table when Ma'am appeared. Marian? Up already? You got an early start. Good morning, Ma'am. Ja, everything is almost ready. Ma'am nodded. Good. That's good. Just finishing up the eggs. Dat should be in soon. Ma'am sat in the rocker by the cook stove. I see I'm not necessary around here. Marian glanced at her mother. Was she being sarcastic? She was relieved when she saw an amused smirk on Ma'am's face. Oh, you're completely necessary, Marian said. We couldn't possibly get on without you. She wondered if in her zeal to help her mother, she was laying it on a bit thick, but Ma'am seemed pleased at her words for she tipped her head with a smile on her lips. Perhaps you can grab the milk for me, Marian suggested. She scooped the scrambled eggs into a glass bowl and set a plate on top to keep them warm. She carried the covered bowl out to the table and set it before Dat's spot. Morning. Marian turned to see her Dat enter the dining area. Smells good. Lydia, your eggs are always the best. He grinned at Ma'am who was carrying the milk to the table. They're not my eggs, Ma'am said. Marian cooked them. Dat gazed at Marian. Fine. So you're helping out, then? I always help out, Marian said, a bit too quickly. Why must she always react to Dat's comments? It was unseemly. Marian is going to the library again today. Ma'am sat in her chair and reached for a slice of toast dripping with butter. Marian's eyes widened. No. I'm not going today. Ja, you are, Ma'am said. I know how much you like it there. Marian stared at her mother as she took a small bite of toast and chewed it slowly. Ma'am didn't seem to notice Marian's scrutiny but simply went on eating her breakfast. Marian swallowed. I'm planning to stay here to help with the chores and with Izzy. Ma'am's eyes flashed anger and then she lowered her lashes. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of my own child. You go on. I'm sure your Englisher friend will be there waiting for you. Roger? How did she know about Roger? With a start, Marian realized she wasn't referring to Roger at all. She was talking about Amy. Marian took a sip of milk to gather herself. Now she was acting irrational, too. Assuming Ma'am had meant Roger? This wouldn't do. It wouldn't do at all. I think Marian should stay home like she planned, Dat said. Ma'am squeezed her fist tightly around her fork, her knuckles going white. No, she said, carefully enunciating the word. I don't want help today. She looked at Marian. You go on. I don't need the pony cart. Marian gave her father a helpless glance. All right, ma'am, she murmured. Right after breakfast, you can leave. The library doesn't open till later. Right after breakfast, you can leave, ma'am repeated. If you'd like me to go, I will, Marian said, wondering what she could do in downtown Hollybrook at such an early hour. Ma'am wouldn't let Marian help get Izzy up and dressed that morning. So shortly after eating breakfast and clearing the table, Marian went down to the barn and hitched up Frosty. The summer sun was already blazing and Marian was lightly sweating before she drove the pony cart into the library lot. She was the only one there, of course, given that the library didn't open for another 45 minutes. She wished Amy was there. Or Roger. Anyone to pass the time with. She wasn't too fond of her own thoughts lately, and given free rein, she didn't like where they led her. But since Ma'am had basically kicked her out of the house, she was determined to spend some time in the library researching her mother's odd behavior. She knew there were books on such things, plus she was certain she could find information on the internet. After all, Amy had shown her how to use a search engine to find things online, and she was fairly sure she remembered how. She secured Frosty beneath the shade of the lone tree in the lot and then stood under the same tree waiting for the library to open. She gazed at the cars passing by, wondering where everyone was going in such a hurry. Perhaps to their jobs. Or maybe to visit family members. Or to pick up necessary supplies. 3 children pedaled by on bicycles, laughing and yelling at each other along the way. She grinned. She'd learned how to ride a bike years before, although some in the community weren't any too pleased with the contraption. But her parents weren't opposed. She didn't use the bicycle much, though, preferring to take the pony cart when she had chores to do. She stepped toward Frisky and patted her warm, thick neck. You're my transport, aren't you, Frisky girl? Frisky snorted and shook her head. Marian laughed and went back to leaning against the trunk of the tree. The library workers arrived before the library officially opened, and Marian watched them rush through the glass doors and then bustle about inside. Since the front wall was mainly glass, it was easy to see them. She wondered what it would be like to work in a library and have all those books at her disposal every day. She would like that. No, she would love that. But it wasn't a possibility, so she shoved the idea from her mind. A few more cars pulled into the lot and people climbed out and milled around the door. When the library finally opened, they filed in, Marian not far behind. She went directly to the computer area and got busy logging on. She typed miscarriage into Google and was shocked to see over 17 million choices. She fell back against her chair and stared at the screen. How in the world was she to decide which one to choose? She skimmed the first choices and saw an entry with the words anxiety and depression, loss of sanity. She clicked on it and began reading. As she continued through the article, she felt the weight of her mother's pain close in on her like a heavy wool blanket. And even worse to think that her mother suffered in silence, letting no one help her. She learned that her ma'am could be suffering from clinical depression and that she could silently fear losing her own sanity. Marian paused, her heart sick. Was her mother so deeply troubled? Fact was, Marian herself worried her mother was losing her sanity. She read on and realized Ma'am needed help. She needed to see someone in the medical profession. But her mother would never agree to see an English doctor. Never. Could her auntie convince her? Or Dad? She'd have to convince them first. And how could she? By telling them she read information on a computer? They'd scold her for even paying attention to worldly wisdom. She stared at the screen until her eyes misted over. She offered up a silent prayer for her entire family, knowing that only God could intervene and help. Suddenly someone came up from behind and cupped two hands over her eyes. Surprise! She jumped and flung herself around, breaking free. Roger laughed, but upon seeing her face, sobered immediately. Oh no! I scared you. Like, for real, scared you. Marian breathed rapidly, her hand to her chest. Ja, you did scare me for sure and for certain. He grabbed a chair and pulled it close, sidling up to her. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. No. It's all right. She was still breathing heavily, not only from surprise but because Roger was sitting so close, she could feel his breath on her face. He touched her shoulder, and she felt her skin tingle beneath her dress. Are you okay? She nodded and swallowed the lump of nerves in her throat. I hoped you'd be here. His voice was low. He gave her a compelling look, increasing her already unsettled state. But we weren't, we decided. Marian was mortified that she couldn't get out a simple sentence. He moved even closer. I know, he whispered. We already said goodbye and we weren't going to see each other. But I can't stop thinking about you. He reached up and smoothed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch sent a flame of fire across her cheek, and the feeling was so overwhelming and unfamiliar, she shivered and moved back. His hand froze and then dropped to his lap. I'm sorry, he muttered. Really? You must think me daft. Touching an Amish girl. Marian's eyelids fluttered. She shouldn't be there. Not with him. It was wrong. He wasn't Amish, and he had touched her. She put her hand to her mouth and stared at him. He scooted back, looking confused and regretful. I'm sorry. No. It's all right. But it wasn't. It wasn't all right at all. She closed her eyes for a minute and Thomas's kind, patient face filled her mind. She envisioned his eyes that looked like the sky on a warm summer day. She saw his expression of concern over her recent tears, and she heard his pledge to help if she ever needed him. Roger coughed, and she was jolted back to the present moment. He stood then and loomed over her, tall and handsome and English. He gazed at her. Please, Marian. Can't we see each other? His question hung in the air, inviting her to a world full of new possibilities. The offer was so bewildering, she wavered. She struggled with the uncertainty that he aroused in her and felt heavy with decision. The seconds ticked by as misgivings congested her mind. She shifted in her chair, and cold reason took over. She shook her head. I don't see how. Can I at least still comment on your blog? I don't know if I can continue my blog, she said. What do you mean? I might not be coming to the library anymore. And her heart died a little. But why not? My ma'am isn't well. She needs me at home. Roger squatted before her and looked deeply into her eyes. Is it because you don't want to run into me? I can leave you alone, you know. If that's what you really want. Tears welled in her eyes. That isn't it. The words rushed out unbidden, and she clapped her hand over her mouth. His eyebrows creased into a frown, and then a slow smile covered his face. So you do like me? At least a little. It doesn't matter if I like you or not, she said with dull finality. But you're writing? Your blog? That doesn't matter either, she said, her heart dying a little more. And Amy? Are you going to see her any more? Marian shook her head. Probably not. Roger gave a low whistle and stood, again towering over her. Is your mother going to be all right? Marian picked at the edge of her thumbnail, scraping the skin until it hurt. I hope so. She nodded. She will. God will see to that. So this is goodbye? Again? Marian swallowed. This is goodbye again. To you, to my blog, and to Amy. She felt something break off inside her, some part of herself, and she yearned to grab it up and attach it again. Roger didn't take his eyes from hers. Finally, he sighed. All right. I'll respect your wishes. But for the record, I don't agree. I know you don't, she whispered. He stepped back. Goodbye, Marian. Her name was a whisper. She nearly weakened, but then she sat up tall and straightened her shoulders. Goodbye, Roger. He lifted his hand in a wave and turned, retreating from her presence. She watched him go, confusion filling her. A million ifs filled her mind and heart. She wanted to believe that somehow there would have been a way for them to get to know each other better. There would have been a way for her to continue writing on her blog. There would have been a way for her to become closer to Amy. But as she pondered it further, the if shriveled and crumpled into nothing. She put her head in her hands and remained motionless. She didn't stir until her breath came easier, and her mind slowed from its frantic swirl. Her final act in the library that day was to log onto her blog. 2 entries. That was all she'd done. It wasn't really a blog at all. It was merely 2 small vignettes of her Amish life. She saw that Roger had commented again, his words fresh and silly. She touched the screen, her fingers hovering over the words an Amish blog as if trying to absorb and save one last part of her writer identity. Disgusted with her sentimentality, she quickly logged off and stood. She glanced at the large square clock on the wall. She'd been gone long enough. With rising unrest, she hurried out to Frisky and her pony cart. She needed to get home to check on Mam and Izzy. She climbed into the cart wishing Thomas might miraculously appear in his wagon. If only he was there, things somehow might not seem so desolate. Chapter 7. Marian hurried across the yard and into the house. She burst through the side door and into the kitchen. No one was in sight. Increasing her pace, she went to the front room. There sat Mam, holding Izzy on her lap. Mam looked up when Marian entered. Marian! You back already? Marian saw that Izzy seemed fine. Is everything all right? Why wouldn't it be? Marian inhaled. No reason. Did you want me to start dinner? Start dinner? How absurd, daughter. You know by this time of day, dinner is well underway. Marian realized the smell of cooking meat permeated the room. What else needs done? Can you take Izzy up and change her diaper? When you're finished, you can help me serve the meal. Mam stood and handed Izzy to Marian. She rubbed her hands down her apron and headed off to the kitchen. Izzy giggled and yanked the strings of Marian's cap, pulling it lopsided. Marian reached up with her free hand and secured the loosened bobby pins. Isabel Yoder, leave your big sister's cap alone? Marian laughed good-naturedly. Filled with overwhelming relief at how she'd found things upon her return, she took the baby upstairs to change her diaper. The next couple days were uneventful. Marian began to think she'd manufactured the entire issue. She also began to sorely regret telling Roger she was going to stop writing her blog. Years ago, when she was a little girl, her dad used to tease her that she was an all-or-nothing girl, she never did anything halfway. It used to irritate her, but now, as she thought about how abruptly she'd given up her blog, she realized her dad had been right. But had there been any choice? She was determined to stay close to home, and staying close to home didn't include dashing off to either the library or Amy's house to get on the internet. What it did include was cheerfully helping with the chores while she kept a vigilant eye on Ma'am. Something she was committed to doing. But Saturday, the day of the work frolic, she woke up restless and depressed. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing out on something, or that something was terribly wrong. She tossed off the quilt and sat on the edge of her bed. She needed to ground herself. 2 people in the household feeling badly wouldn't do. She shoved her emotions aside and went about her daily ritual. But later that morning before leaving in the wagon, she told Ma'am she needed a few minutes outside to check on the chickens. The chickens? Did you forget to feed them? No. I'll be back in a minute. Don't fret. Marian ran around the house and the barn to the coop. The scattered chickens wandered like playing children, jutting out their heads, pecking happily in the thin grass. Marian leaned against the wire fencing and closed her eyes. What she needed was a quiet moment with God. She was upset with herself for still missing her 2 English friends. Why couldn't she put it down? And she remained disturbed over her mother's instability, or whatever it really was, and over her father's refusal to deal with it squarely. And she missed writing in her blog. She let out a sigh that reached her very soul. "Dear God, I need your help," she murmured. "I am upset about so many things, and I need your quiet and grace. I need your steady presence in my life. I need your direction. Help me to submit fully to you, Lord God. Help me to be obedient." She was still for a long moment, listening to the quiet clucking of the hens. The air blew softly against her cheeks, and from above, she heard the gentle cooing of a morning dove. She concentrated on her breathing and the beating of her heart. Slowly, she felt the beginnings of a renewed stillness in her spirit, and she whispered her gratitude. God had heard her. He was there, listening to her plea and easing the unrest of her heart. Her eyes filled with tears as she realized she could never be far from him. She nodded her goodbye to the chickens and turned on her heel to run back to the front of the house. She climbed into the back of the wagon, taking Izzy from Ma'am and balancing her little sister on her lap. During the frolic, the women worked on a quilt for Emmeline Jaber. The much-loved older woman had lost nearly every family member to an untimely death, and she was now feeling poorly herself. The women hoped a new quilt with the beautiful blue star pattern would both comfort Emmeline and show her their love and respect. The men busied themselves with building a new shed for the Jamisons. It wasn't a big project and they were sure to finish shortly after the noon meal. Marian split her time between the quilting and watching the children. Her friend Lizzie Bontrager joined her with the little ones. "Haven't seen you much lately," Lizzie commented as she wiped the nose of young Israel Danner. "Last few days, I've been keeping close to home," Marian answered. "I'm going to the youth singing again. Can we go together?" Marian's cheeks flushed. "No, I'm sorry, Lizzie. It's just that, well, Thomas Groft has asked to escort me home." Lizzie sat back on her haunches. "Thomas Groft." She grinned with delight. "Marian, he's so handsome." "You're lucky." Marian flushed. "Perhaps," she mumbled. "Perhaps? He's wonderful. If you're not interested, I'll trade you places." Marian smiled, pleased with Lizzie's reaction. "I'm thinking you're a bit young for Thomas Groft." "Not really. I'm done with my schooling, you know." I know." Marian reached down and hoisted Israel onto her hip. "I think I'll take this one for a stroll." He's mighty fidgety. Will you be all right with the rest? Lizzie waved her arm. Be off with you. I can handle this. Marian nodded her gratitude and wandered toward the Jamesons' fields. As she walked, she heard the ringing sounds of hammers and the scraping buzz of more than one hand saw. Her dad would be in the middle of the organized chaos, having the time of his life. He loved nothing more than a good work frolic, for it was a chance to practice his skills with a tool and a time to jaw with his friends. Israel wiggled in her arms and she set him down, clasping his tiny hand in hers. You want to stretch your legs a bit? Is that it? Marian. Marian jumped and turned to see Thomas. Hello, Thomas? You startled me. Her pulse increased at seeing his face. Didn't mean to. He joined her, matching her slow steps as she hung onto Israel. He leaned over and tousled Israel's strawberry blonde curls. Hello, little man? He was restless, Marian explained. So we're taking a walk. Thomas adjusted his straw hat, revealing his sapphire blue eyes. I wanted a word. Marian's forehead crinkled and a sense of unease filled her. Oh. Thomas looked off across the field as if reluctant to speak. Marian grew nervous. After waiting a full minute, she finally blurted, What is it? He squared his shoulders. The other day, you were in town, Ja? She cocked her head to the side. Ja, she dragged the word out, her mind racing, wondering where this was going. My dad was in town that day. He saw you. Thomas stopped, obviously uncomfortable. He saw me. Marian started, and then she froze. Thomas's father had seen her at the speedway, riding around in circles on the track in the pony cart. With an Englisher. With Roger. Thomas watched her face, his body stiffening with each passing second. So, it's true. His voice was a husky whisper. She shook her head. What's true? She cried. But she knew. She knew what he was thinking. She knew what the scene had looked like to his father. Thomas's hands hung down his sides. The silence between them loomed like a heavy mist. He backed away. No, Marian said. She let go of Israel's hand and reached out to Thomas. Wait. Let me explain. There's no need, Thomas said, avoiding her touch. You've no call to explain anything to me. He turned around and walked back toward the rest of the men. No. Marian cried again. She watched him go, and such a feeling of loss swept through her that her eyes burned. Israel fell to his bottom in the dirt and cried along with her. She reached down to gather him up, swatting the dirt from his pants. I'm sorry, Israel, she said, biting back a sob. I'm not doing too well at anything right now. She walked back to the house, keeping her gaze straight ahead. Seeing the disappointment on Thomas's face again would completely do her in, and she still had hours of watching the children left. Lizzie was so involved in playing patty cake with little Mary Martha Whip that she didn't notice Marian's teary eyes. Marian was grateful and set about fulfilling her duties with the babies and figuring out how to get herself back home as soon as possible. But the more she thought about it, the more she wanted to set things right between her and Thomas. Yes, it was true what his father had seen. But it was also true that she had ended it all. There were no further possibilities with Roger. The frolic dinner was served at tables spread beneath the Jamesons' apple trees. The workers ate in 2 shifts. Marian was too upset to get much food down as she sat with the women and children, so instead, she got up and helped with the serving and clean up. Before work was again underway, she spotted Thomas heading toward the Jamesons' barn. She glanced around quickly, and seeing no one else near, she ran after him. Thomas. He paused and waited. She hurried to him and was unnerved to see the closed look on his face. She steeled herself. Can I explain? He looked up at the sky and then back to her. Now? I don't think so. But, Thomas, I want to. Her heart lurched. Not here, he said. We can meet later this afternoon after I take my sisters home. I'll wait for you. Relief soared through her. Where? Under your elm tree. She nodded. I'll be there, she whispered. Chapter 8. Marian was totally distracted during the last 2 hours of the frolic. When the last nail was pounded into the shed, she nearly cried with joy. Never had she gathered up everyone's baby things so quickly. Lizzie gave her a quizzical look when she handed Israel to his mother. You practically threw him at her, she whispered in Marian's ear. What is going on? Nothing, Marian said. Just eager to get home. How about you let me finish up, then? Marian gave her a grateful look. Will you? I'll fetch Mam and Dad. Here, let me take Izzy. Marian lifted Izzy from the quilt on the porch where she'd been contentedly sucking on a toy wooden horse. Come on, Izzy. Let's get your mama and daddy, shall we? The trip home was short. Mam put Izzy down for a nap, and Dad disappeared into the barn. Marian sat on the porch, watching the road and craning her neck to make sure she didn't miss Thomas's approach. It was a good hour before he appeared. She schooled herself to walk calmly across the yard, but on the inside, she was running. Thomas greeted her with a nod of his head. He stood awkwardly under the tree, running his foot over the twigs and scattered leaves spotting the ground. Marian suddenly felt shy. The other day, you were crying, Thomas said. Did it have to do with the Englisher? Marian's lips parted in surprise. No. It had nothing to do with him. Thomas exhaled as if relieved. He touched her arm and a shiver went through her. You don't owe me any explanations, Marian. And you don't have to ride with me tomorrow, either. The Englisher was a friend. But I'm not seeing him again, she blurted. You don't have to tell me. But I do. They stared at each other a long minute. His eyes searched hers, and she was caught off guard by the longing in his gaze. Her eyes grew moist, and she looked away to stare at the fields across the street. Marian? She swallowed. Jaw. He stepped closer, and she felt the warmth of his breath on her face. A trembling started in her stomach and moved through her. If she raised her fingers, she could touch his cheek, feel his skin on her fingers. He was so close, and his eyes such a deep blue, Marian felt as if she were sinking. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Marian, he said her name again. She nodded. What is it? Her voice was soft. I'm glad. That it had nothing to do with him, I mean. There was an eagerness in his eyes. And then he touched the brim of his straw hat and left, walking back down the road. She watched him for a moment, and a warm glow flowed through her. She'd known Thomas for years. She'd always thought of him as a kind person, a friend. And he was. But now, he was so much more. A small smile touched her lips as she went back to the house. Later that afternoon, Marian checked on Izzy napping in her crib. Mam was out rocking on the porch with her knitting, and she wasn't sure where Dad was, outside somewhere, tending to who knows what. Marian watched Izzy's peaceful face for a few minutes, and the baby's sweet calm seeped into her heart. She crept quietly out of the baby's room, planning to catch up on some mending. She went to grab her sewing box when she heard Mam call her name. She went to the head of the stairs and called down. What is it, Mam? Come down here. Mam answered. Her tone was strange, and Marian raced down the steps. She hurried out to the front porch and stopped short when she saw a white car in the drive. Ma'am was standing, staring at the visitor. The driver's door opened and Amy got out. "Amy!" Marian cried. Despite her earlier proclamation about not seeing Amy again, she was beyond pleased to see her. Amy gave a subdued smile. "Hi, Marian. I hope it's all right that I came." Marian rushed down the stairs and ran to her friend. She grabbed her hands. "Of course it's all right. How did you know where to find me?" "I asked at the feed and supply." Amy gazed around her. "You have a lovely home." "Come inside," Marian said, leading her up the steps. Ma'am hadn't moved from her statue-like stance next to the rocking chair. "Ma'am, this is my friend, Amy." Ma'am's face tightened, and she gave Amy a curt nod. Amy glanced at Marian and then back to Ma'am. "Nice to meet you," she said, her voice overly friendly. Again, Ma'am nodded. "Come in," Marian said, opening the squeaky screen door. They went into the front room and sat on the couch. "Are you thirsty?" Marian asked. "I can get you some lemonade." Amy shook her head. "No, but thanks." She gazed around at the simple furnishings. "It's nice here. Peaceful like." "Thank you. Your mom seems mad I came." "She's not overly fond of Englishers." Marian waved her hand. "Don't worry. I'm glad you came. You haven't posted to your blog lately." "I know." Marian bit the inside of her lip. How much should she share with Amy? "I don't think I will be writing on it anymore." "You mean ever?" "But why not? You were so excited." "I'm needed here, so I can't be at the library to work on it." Amy regarded her, and the silence in the room stretched out between them. "There's more to it than that," she finally said. Marian remained silent. Should she divulge her fears about her mother, how confused she had been about Roger's attention, how she had yearned to stay a while in the English world? She gave a small shudder. Divulging such things simply wasn't done in her community. Amy gave Marian's knee a gentle pat. "Oh, I'm sorry. It's none of my business. My mom tells me all the time that I'm too nosy, and I talk too much." "So, how have you been?" "I'm fine," Marian answered. "Busy. We had a work frolic this morning." "A work frolic?" Amy shook her head. "I love the way you phrase things, and the way you guys help each other." Marian smiled. "I saw Roger yesterday," Amy said. "He asked if I'd seen you. Actually, it was seeing him that put me in the mind to come over. To be honest, I think he likes you." Marian took a long, slow breath. Hearing Roger's name made her thoughts return again to Thomas and his father and the whole ordeal. She braced herself for any leftover emotion, any remaining yearning, but instead all she felt was a hollow sadness about Roger, as if she were thinking about someone who had passed. "What is it?" Amy asked. "Don't you like him?" Marian sighed. "I liked him fine. But that door is closed. I'll never see him again." "Never? Why would I? It's not like we travel in the same circles." Amy nodded. "I suppose you're right on that count." She looked around again. "Can you show me the rest of the house and your farm? Will your mom get mad if you do?" Marian was relieved to have the subject change. She laughed. "She might. But I'll show you anyway." Amy left after staying more than an hour. Saying goodbye was bittersweet as Marian had no idea if they would meet again. After waving her off, she went back inside the house to help Ma'am prepare a light supper. "I hope you had a good time," Ma'am said, her words dripping with sarcasm. Marian stiffened. I did. The English don't fit in here. She wasn't trying to fit in. She's my friend and only came to visit. Ma'am threw down the potato masher. I told you before, I don't like you having an English friend. She's not welcome here. Ma'am strode across the kitchen, her face red and her eyes flashing. Don't let her come again. You think I want her stealing you away? You think I want to be down to one child? Marian stepped back from her mother's onslaught. She isn't stealing me away. Ma'am squinted at her. She could. Children come and go. You ought to know that. Marian bit her lip and watched her mother's jerky movements as she went back to grab up the masher again. Her breathing went shallow and Marian saw a wild look come into her mother's eyes. Ma'am glared at her. You'll learn soon enough. Just wait and see. Learn what, ma'am? Marian forced her voice into a calm, patient tone. Ma'am waved the masher, splattering small blobs of potato over the counter. About life. About death. Marian took a step toward her mother. Is there something you want to tell me? She spoke softly, as if her mother was a hurt child. Ma'am raked the masher through the pot. I have nothing to tell you. Nothing. All right. Marian sighed her disappointment. She picked up a loaf of bread and got out the bread knife. She began sawing through the bread, cutting thick slices and stacking them on a red glass plate. Ma'am sucked in air and dropped the masher into the wide pan. It splashed hot potatoes on Ma'am's face, and she let out a cry. Marian quickly wet a dishcloth with cold water. She pressed it on her Ma'am's cheek. Are you all right? Ma'am squeezed her hand over Marian's like a claw. You'll see, she hissed in Marian's ear. It's nothing but pain. Marian knew she wasn't talking about the burn on her face. No, ma'am. It isn't. There's plenty of good in life. You stupid girl. You know nothing. Ma'am's words sliced the air. Marian gasped, stepped back, and pulled her hand from Ma'am's face. Never had her mother given her such an insult. Ma'am covered her face with her hands and began to cry. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry, daughter. Marian blew out her breath. Ignoring her own hurt and shock, she put her arms around her mother. It's all right. Don't worry, she crooned. Come. Sit down for a minute and rest. She led her mother to the dining table and sat her down. She mustered her courage and spoke. Maybe we should go see a doctor. Ma'am's head jerked around and she stared at Marian. Why? Who's sick? And we don't need any English doctor poking his nose into our business. Then how about seeing May? She does wonders with her herbs. Who's sick? Ma'am, please, don't be this way. You need to see someone. Get some help. Marian worked to keep the tears from running down her cheeks. Ma'am slapped her hand on the table and stood. I'm perfectly fine. Perhaps you're the one who needs to see May. You're becoming addled in the brain. She marched back to the kitchen. Marian stared after her, her heart sinking. Her legs began to tremble, but she straightened her shoulders and went back into the kitchen. She wouldn't mention doctoring to Ma'am again. Thomas slapped the reins on the horse, and his courting carriage moved with ease down the side of the road. It was fully dark, as the youth's singing had gone long into the night. Marian sat next to him, deeply aware of every move he made. His shoulder rubbed against hers as he drove the horse, and she reveled in its warmth, not moving away. Thank you for letting me take you home, he said. She looked at him in the shadows and smiled. Thank you for taking me, she replied. She felt an ease sitting beside him and found Thomas's calm presence comforting. She was so grateful that she was there, with him, and that the tension of yesterday was a thing of the past. She closed her eyes and listened to the horses' steady clip-clop as they continued down the road. The night air brushed her cheeks, and the very stillness of the evening gave her a welcome sense of normalcy. He pulled up on the reins and the horse stopped. Marian opened her eyes and gazed at him. "What's wrong?" she asked. He shook his head, and she saw how his eyes shone in the faint light of the moon. "Nothing. Can we take the long way home? Would that be all right with you?" She knew what he was asking. If she said yes, it would mean she wanted him to court her, that she wasn't interested in anyone else. She put her hand on his arm and felt a tremor pass between them. "I think we should take the long way home." "The long, long way? Truly?" She grinned. "Truly." With that, he cracked the reins and the carriage started again down the road. She felt his mood soar and even heard him chuckle under his breath. Her spirits rose along with his, and she felt better than she had for weeks. They passed through a grove of trees, and Thomas reached over and took her hand in his. She felt his rough, warm skin on hers and gave his hand a returning squeeze. She leaned back and watched the shadows play out across the road, moving stealthily as a gentle breeze stirred the trees. To her left, she saw something move. She sat upright. "Over there," she said, pointing. Thomas turned to follow her gesture. The shadow was running, and it looked to be a woman. Dread seized Marian's heart, and she strained her eyes to get a better look. "Stop!" she cried. Thomas pulled the horse to a halt. Marian scrambled out of the carriage and ran toward the moving shadow. "Ma'am," she called. "Ma'am, is it you?" But she knew it was. She increased her speed, following the darting path of her mother. She was closing in, and she could hear Ma'am panting as she tore through the trees. Marian reached out and grabbed at her, catching the back of her gown, and they both toppled to the ground. "Get off me!" Ma'am cried. "What are you doing?" Marian sat back on the dirt, gasping. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "I was." Ma'am scrambled to her feet. "I'm chasing your brother. He's getting away." She shifted her weight from one side to the other and pulled on the seam of her gown, twisting it into knots. "My brother?" Your brother? He keeps getting away from me." Thomas caught up with them. "Marian! What's happening? Who are you?" Ma'am asked. "You're not my son." In the darkness, Marian saw him flinch. He looked quickly at her, then back at Ma'am. She could almost see his mind working. "No, I'm not your son," he said quietly, walking to her side. His movements were slow and fluid. "Are you looking for him?" "I imagine he's around here somewhere." "I will help you look for him." "Thomas," Marian started. Surely, he knew there was no son. He held up his hand to her, then turned back to Ma'am. "Come, I'll take you in my carriage. We can go faster that way." "All right," Ma'am said with hesitation. She stood rooted to the ground for a moment longer, and then she glared at Marian and let Thomas lead her back through the fallen leaves and over the uneven ground to the carriage. Marian scurried to catch up, watching in awe at how Thomas handled her mother. All of them climbed into the carriage, and Thomas turned the horse toward home. Ma'am leaned on Thomas's shoulder as the carriage rolled steadily over the road. When they pulled into their lane and right up to the porch, Dat was there, pacing back and forth, holding a gas lamp. He looked at them, his face covered with both relief and surprise. Ma'am clambered over Marian and jumped down, running up the steps to him. "I didn't find him. But this young man is helping me." "Find who?" "Our son, of course." Dat went stiff, and his eyes grew wide. He looked from Ma'am to Marian and back to Ma'am. Ma'am stood in the circle of light, a sad, hopeful expression on her face. She tipped her head to the side and rubbed her hand over her mouth. Dat set the lamp on the porch railing and took Ma'am into his arms. "All right," he said. "All right. All right." Marian's stomach cramped with anxiety as she and Thomas climbed out and stood at the bottom step of the porch. Dat gazed at her again, a look of resignation on his face. Ma'am pulled away from Dat and went to the door. "I'm tired. I'm going to bed. I'll be up." Dat's arms hung loosely at his sides. Ma'am went inside, leaving the three of them, standing awkwardly, behind. Dat shook his head and stared at his daughter. "You were right. Things are bad. She's not getting any better. In fact, she's worse." He shook his head again and let out a heavy sigh. "I have no choice. It can't go on. I'll speak to Bishop in the morning." He turned and went inside, his shoulders slumped and his body bent like an old man. The screen door slammed closed behind him. Marian couldn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the door as if she expected them both to reappear and laugh and ask her if she had enjoyed their performance. But they didn't reappear, and it hadn't been a performance. Thomas shuffled his feet and took a small step back. Marian flinched and tore her gaze from the door. "You were wonderful with her," she whispered. "How did you know what to do?" Thomas took a moment before answering. "I had a great aunt. She was ill, too." "Did she get better?" Marian's voice broke, and she nearly choked on the words. "Did she?" Thomas exhaled. "In time. Not completely. But, she got better." The air left Marian's lungs, and she felt unsteady on her feet. Thomas moved to her and put his arm around her. She leaned against him, feeling unable to stand alone. He led her up the steps, and they sat on the porch swing in the dark. "God will help her," he said quietly. "And Bishop will know what to do." The porch swing moved gently to and fro. Marian's thoughts jerked through her mind in jumbled disarray. She thought of little Izzy, and she grabbed Thomas's arm. "Will they send Ma'am away?" "The bishop and the deacons," she asked. "How would Izzy manage without her mama? Would Marian be enough for her little sister? Would Marian be enough for the entire household?" Thomas paused. Then he shook his head. "I don't know. Perhaps they will. There's a place not too far from here for people who need that kind of help. I've heard good things. The Mennonites run it." "I know about it," Marian said. "Last year, Ezra Crable went there. Remember?" Thomas nodded. They continued rocking, and Marian felt so weary she wanted to lay over on Thomas's shoulder and sleep for a year. But someone needed to check on the baby. "And Dat and Ma'am?" She stood. "I have to go in," she said. He nodded and rose. "Jaw." He squeezed her arm, and she felt the power of his touch. Tears came to her eyes as she regarded him. "You don't have to strap yourself with me, you know. I have no idea what I might be facing, what I might have to do now. If Ma'am leaves." She drew a shaky breath, dreading her next words, although she knew she had to say them. "It might be better if we parted ways." He gazed into her eyes, and even though he wasn't tall, he loomed over her right then, strong and sure. "No," he said. He bent and brushed his lips over her cheek. And this time, his touch was like a ray of hope, an assurance that things might not always be as bleak as they seemed right then. Marian put her hand to her cheek where he'd kissed her, still feeling the warmth of his lips. He turned and slowly went down the stairs, each footstep echoing through the quiet night. At the base of the stairs, he gazed up at her. "No. We won't be parting ways, Marian Yoder. Not now, not ever. He nodded at her then, and she saw the glimmer of his smile in the starlight. The end. Thank you for listening to this heartwarming story by Brenda Maxfield. You can be assured that all her books are clean and wholesome. To find other romances by Brenda Maxfield, as well as the other authors at Tika House Publishing, visit www.tikahousepublishing.com. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next Brenda Maxfield Amish romance.